سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا بما علمتنا وفقهنا إذا جهلنا وزدنا علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا يا كريم. اللهم انفعنا واجمعنا بالقرآن العظيم واجعله لنا إماما ونورا وهدى ورحمة يا كريم. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وفهمنا معاني التنزيل. وبعد. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما، صلاة تفتح لنا بها أبواب الرضا والتيسير وتغلق بها أبواب الشر والتعسير. أنت مولانا فنعم المولى ونعم النصير. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما، صلاة تفتح لنا بها أبواب الرضا والتيسير وتغلق بها أبواب الشر والتعسير. أنت مولانا فنعم المولى ونعم النصير. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما، صلاة تفتح لنا بها أبواب الرضا والتيسير وتغلق بها أبواب الشر والتعسير. أنت مولانا فنعم المولى ونعم النصير. Bismillah. We continue in our study of Surah Yasin, where we're studying ayatullah ta'ala, signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His creation, which point to the Creator and to the power and the knowledge of the Creator. We've seen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking about ayatum lahumul ardul mayta, the dead earth, the great sign in the dead earth, washamsu tajri li mustaqarrin laha. Just some closing points on this, because there's so much that can be said about the sun and the movement of the sun. I've mentioned a few times, and I actually went away and checked up on this, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says tajri li mustaqarrin laha, that the sun races to its resting place. The sun travels through space faster than a bullet, and it is estimated, current estimates is that the sun with the earth and the solar system moving together as one, the sun moves through space at close to 500,000 miles per second. 500,000 miles per second. That's tajri li mustaqarrin laha. Close to 500,000 miles per second, the sun moves through space, and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying tajri, the sun races towards its resting place. But then after class yesterday, I was just reflecting over what we were reading, and one of the things that came, especially about ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. MashaAllah, many online, many of those who listen to this, and in fact, pretty much all would have at one level studied the sciences. All will have some familiarity with it, whether it's biological sciences, science of the human body, whether it's chemistry, physics, all of the sciences. But one of the things about what Surah Yasin here is pointing towards, and much of the Quran is pointing towards when it speaks about these, it makes us question, why do we learn these sciences? Why do we learn these sciences? We learn the science at school to be educated, and it's usually in order to pass certain qualifications so you can work a job, and so you can become a doctor, you can become whatever, a physician, a dentist, whatever type of job. That's why people study sciences. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about, because science is essentially the study of the world, what's termed as natural world. But natural world, the word natural here is just to remove the sense of the divine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's the world created by Allah. We study science to study the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not the natural world. It's not a natural world. It's a created world, created by Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So everybody who studies the science will usually do it because it's usually because of work, because of a job and employment and so on. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points towards whenever he speaks about these signs, because that's a study of that world of science. ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ رَبُّكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always pointing to us. That's the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the ultimate, and in truth, the only reason, or the prime reason why you should study any science, is to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to see the divine imprint within it, to see that this is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even in the Muslim world, but definitely here, like those in the UK and the Western world, you study science, you're taught science without any completely divorced and stripped off the creator. There is no mention of the creator whatsoever. And in fact, it's the opposite. It's actually rejection of the creator. So even the believer, when he studies astronomy, and he learns about the whole of that system, the speed of the sun and the spinning of the earth on its orbit, and what we're going to go through now about the moon and so on. He sees that as the goal itself, as the object itself, just to study itself as the goal and the object, to know and to understand it. Whereas the believer sees all of that as a sign that there's a creator behind all of that. The believer, and that's ayatun lahum, ayatun lahum, ayatun lahum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, this is all a sign that there's a creator. And in addition, what we read yesterday in one of the reports from Ibn Abbas about how angels keep on prodding the sun to keep on moving, come out of, to rise at every single point. A person who's been educated in an atheistic, agnostic educational system will perhaps mock that and ridicule that, or perhaps mock the idea, what's it mean that angels are prodding the sun? Even though the prophets indicate that every drop of rain that comes down is brought down by an angel. We know from hadith that thunder is the sound of an angel. Thunder is the sound of an angel. The scientist can compute all of that, but he can't speak about reasons that come from another world of existence. And so again, because of the lack of belief in the ghaib, it then leads to rejection. Angels have got nothing to do, because we've calculated it, therefore that's all there is. Because we can compute it, therefore that's all there is. And so when we come to these type of ayat, it should breathe back into our knowledge of the sciences that we've learned, the most fundamental aspect. ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. This is all the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we're studying. And so then to carry on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلًا حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْعُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلًا حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْعُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ. And we have set for the moon stages until it returns like an old shriveled date palm stalk. And we have set for the moon stages until it returns like an old shriveled date palm stalk. So now Allah now moves on to the moon. But here, just in terms of the i'rab, just in terms of the grammatical construct, to understand how it's set up in the verses, there's a slight difference here, because we started off with وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ الْأَرْضِ. So the first sign is the earth, al-ard al-mayta, and then وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍ. And so here the waw is ataf, and it's linking it back, and so it's saying, and also a further sign is the sun, وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍ. But here there's a slight difference. وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ. And we'll get on, Ibn Ajib is going to get onto the different qira'at. There's two ways this is read. وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ وَالْقَمَرُ قَدَّرْنَاهُ. Those who have been following the reading of Taraweeh in Bradford, they would have heard Sheikh Tawfiq recite as وَالْقَمَرُ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلَ. That's the second way it was revealed to the Prophet. Both were revealed to the Prophet. وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ وَالْقَمَرُ قَدَّرْنَاهُ. Both were revealed to the Prophet. Our reading of it, the transmission that we have in the Quran is وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلًا. But here it's slightly different, because it's not going back to ayatun, because the sign is the earth, and then it was the night, وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ اللَّيْلُ وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي, and an additional sign. But here Allah subhanahu slightly changes it. He doesn't say it's not وَآيَةٌ لَهُمُ الْقَمَرُ. What's the qamara for the grammarians here is mansub. It's in a state of nasb. It's got a fatha on it. So it's different to al-ardu, al-laylu, al-shamsu. It's different because they're all dhamma. Here it's wal-qamara. So what's that link? What's that connecting it to? It's connecting it to what's there in the word, qaddarnahu. And we have set. Let's just go back. Yeah, that is the decree of the invincible, of the all-knowing. So slight difference in translation of the verse, but the word here we have set, qaddarnahu, is the same word that came at the end of the previous verse, ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. That's the decree that he set for the movement of the sun, and likewise in the same way he set for the moon stages. So in this ayah, ذلك والقمر قدرناه, ذلك تقدير والقمر قدرناه. When Allah finished speaking about the sun, he said that's how Allah set it, and he's decreed it. That's how he's created it to be. And in the same way he set the moon. والقمر قدرناه. And in the same way we've decreed for the moon to be created, but in stages. Just as the sun racing through space close to 500 miles per hour, 500,000, 500,000 miles per hour. That's from Taqdeer al-Aziz al-Alim. That's the decree that's been set, and that's a creative system that's been set by the invincible, the all-knowing. وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ. We've also decreed and set for the moon to be set in stages. But in that setting and the decreeing of how he created the moon and the sun relative to the earth, there's a difference. Because the sun is an unchangeable body as far as we see. Every day it appears the same. Every day it rises and moves exactly the same way as it is. So the Shams relative to us, the sun relative to us, is almost like a fixed entity. But the moon is different. The moon, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set in stages, manazil al-Shams. وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ manazil. The stages of the moon, the lunar, what used to be termed as the lunar mansions. And the idea here being that every single night, in the beginning of the month to the end of the month, and the moon orbits the earth once a month. And in terms of the etymology, the word moon and month are actually connected to the same word, because the moon orbits the earth every single month. In English, the word moon and month are connected to the same roots, because it orbits the earth every single month. But as it orbits, it's different. The sun we see appears the same every single day, pretty much appears the same. But the moon appears differently. When the moon rises at the beginning of the month, it appears as a fine crescent, as a fine new moon. And then as it moves along, almost like a side reel that's moving along, the moon, every single night, it's increased slightly, and in the first half of the month, and it's moving along in the sky. It's not fixed in the sky. It moves across the night sky until it reaches the halfway point when you have the Badr, the full moon, and then it starts to wane. And so every single night it's now decreasing the second half of the month, but in the night sky it appears at a different point. And that's the stages that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of in the moon. So the moon is variable relative to us, whereas the sun is static relative to us in terms of how we observe it. And the key to that, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it in that way, he refers to Surah Yunus. وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ الشَّمْسَ ضِيَاءً وَالْقَمَرَ نُورًا. He subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who made the earth as a source of light. ضِيَاءً, as an illuminator. It gives off heat, it gives off light. That's the word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used about the sun, ضِيَاءً وَالْقَمَرَ نُورًا. But the moon, nur, a reflective light. The sun, a source of light. The moon is dark. When we see the moon, we're just seeing the reflection of the sun, the light of the sun. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected two words that indicate the difference between them. When he spoke about the sun and moon, he spoke about different nature of lights in Surah Yunus. The sun is a light that emits itself, diya, wal qamara nuran. But the moon is a reflective light. وهو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب. I think it's verse number 6 at the beginning of Surah Yunus, because here the manazil come again. Now, when you look at Surah Yunus, when he speaks about the light of the sun and the light of the moon, he subhanahu wa ta'ala says then he set it, the one, not the moon, he set it in stages. The stages of the moon being that's referred to here in Surah Yunus, Surah Yasin referred to Surah Yunus. And what's noted there, when Allah speaks about the sun and the moon together like here, he speaks of the stages of the moon, but he doesn't speak of that about the sun, because it's an unchangeable, as far as we see, whereas the moon every night changes. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the reason why he created the moon in that way relative to us. He said, لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ وَالْحِسَابَ لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ وَالْحِسَابَ, so that you may know the number of days within the year. The number of days, لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ, the years, وَالْحِسَابَ, so that you may compute. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the moon in that way, so we can know the day, so we can know the months of the year, Without that, we don't have that system by which we're able to know time itself. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the sun as the unchangeable, but the moon as the changeable. In Surah Yunus, he tells us as to why the stages are there, لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ وَالْحِسَابِ, so that you may know the number of years, the changing months within the year, and the year after year that he created. He said in Surah At-Tawbah, إِنَّ عِدَّةَ الشُّهُورِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ 12 شهرا, that the number of months with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 12 from the day that he created the heavens, from the beginning of creation. And so that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set moons in stages. Shaykh Ali As-Sabuni rahimahullah ta'ala, he says about the moon, or he comments upon this ayah about the moon, وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلِ. This means that we, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have set the movement of the moon in the stages in which it moves in order to know the months. The 12 months of the year by which we then know the year itself. Now here, Shaykh Ali As-Sabuni rahimahullah ta'ala, he introduced the concept of manazil, the stages. He says there are 28 stages and 28 nights. Now just something on that. Manazil al-Qamar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses a term here, and the Arabs have this term as well, where they spoke about manazil is jam'u manzil. It's almost like a house. And that's why in older works they refer to it as lunar mansions, because it's as though every night it has a particular home that the moon appears within, and that moves across the night sky every single night. And so the Arabs, they spoke about 28. And these manazil, these 28 stages or these mansions every night, they were very significant in the ancient world. The Chinese, they had they spoke about the lunar mansions. The ancient Indians spoke about lunar mansions. But interestingly, when you look at it, when you go and research it, the ancient Chinese and ancient Indians, they connected to a lot of the shirk that they were in, a lot of the idolatry that they were in. They connected it to a lot of that, and that's why you also find when you research the moon, the lunar stages, a lot of it's to do with black magic and witchcraft. In ancient cultures and ancient civilizations, it's only the Quran that came and told us the reason why these stages are there, is that by which you can know months and years, days, nights, months and years. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came and removed all of that shirk that's there with it, and came and told us this is the purpose why you have these lunar mansions. So the ancients they spoke of it as 28. I think some civilizations slightly less than that. But in the modern world, in modern astronomy, they speak about 8 stages that the moon passes through during the month. Every night the moon enters into one of them. The 28 stages that they spoke of, that the Arabs spoke of and other civilizations spoke of, never missing nor passing any one of them. Every night you'll see the moon appearing at the same point. And every month at the same point, every night will appear at the same point. And it will wax and it will wane. It will increase in size and it will decrease in size as the month passes. And all of that is taqdeer al-aziz al-alim. Allah set it that way. He set it that way so that you can know the months and the years. When it reaches its final stage, the end of the month, it becomes fine and curved. And we're going to see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes it. And it's actually I was actually thinking about just getting a picture of it up there. But when you see a date palm that's old, qadim, it's old, it's bent over and curved like somebody, like an old person who's hunched over, like a hunchback. It's almost like that. And when you look at the crescent, it's exactly the same thing. The crescent at the end of the month, it's the exact same description that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes, kal-urjun al-qadim, until it returns like an old, shriveled date palm stalk. Ibn Kathir, Shaykh Ali Sabuni, rahimahullah ta'ala. One thought about this, one reflection on this. As human beings and human civilization, except for those who specialize within these subjects. Is it okay? Yeah. Especially for those who specialize, i.e. those who actually study these areas, astronomy, for example. All of this doesn't mean anything for most people. Why? Because we just live in our concrete jungles. We live in our virtual world now. Nobody ever looks up at the night sky. No, people have just stopped looking at the night sky. Whereas for not ancient humans, normal human beings, that was something. And you didn't need to be an expert in astronomy to be able to read the night sky. Everybody had an understanding of the night sky. When we study in fiqh, for example, prayer times, it's about the movement of the sun during the day. That's what the prayer time is about. Now, even when we go and study in the books of fiqh about it, it speaks about the shadows on the ground, and it speaks about the nature or the night sky, the darkness of the night sky and the lightness, the twilight and so on. Nobody knows what you're talking about now. A simple question, what website do we go onto? That's the question. What website do we go onto? That website saying this one, and that timetable saying that time. So the reason why you got the arguments about when's Fajr for Sahur and when's Iftar and the 5-minute difference and so on, so it's because nobody's looking up anymore. It's because nobody's looking anymore. And even the website that you have, for example, one of the ones that I rely upon is the Muwaqqit website. The Muwaqqit is the timekeeper. And in all communities, you have the timekeeper who would look up at the sky, and then he'll say, the sun has set, and then the mu'adhin will make the adhan. Now, what's happened here? We've moved out of what people term the natural world. Rather, we've moved out of the created world of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should change that vocabulary, because that's a vocabulary of kufr. The natural world, it's not a natural world. It's created by Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a created world. It's a divine world. Because we've moved away from it, and all we see is the world that we've created, which has led to an increase in atheism, rejection of God, because we don't see His world anymore. We see the world that we have created. We reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just a comment there that the sisters made online. And absolutely, when you reflect over the creation of the sun and the moon, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, absolutely, the sister's right there, absolutely. Which of the signs of Allah will you deny when there's so much there? But when you don't know about them, when you don't know, people just don't reflect and think about it anymore. Just to continue this, Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah ta'ala, states that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the moon for the months to be known, as He made the sun for the day and night to be known. That's khalq Allah. That's khalq Allah. That's a system that He subhanahu wa ta'ala put in place. So you can compute it all day long. You can study the intricacies of it. All you're studying is the khalq of Allah subhanahu, the creation of Allah subhanahu, and that's the system that He's put in place. The moon is for us to know the month, and the sun is for us to recognize day and night. He distinguished between the movement of the sun and the movement of the moon. The sun rises every morning and sets at its end. And that's it. That's Shamsu Tajri Mustaqarrin lah. Because the key thing when Allah spoke about the sun, the key point, li mustaqarrin lah, the end point, which is the setting, which is then followed by the rising of the sun. So that's how Allah addresses about the sun. But when it came to the moon, and its rising point, setting points move during the summer and the winter. And as we said, we finished on that point yesterday, that Allah spoke about Rabbul Mashriqi wal Maghrib. Rabbul Mashriqi wal Maghrib, the Lord of the East and the West. But He also spoke about Al-Mashariq wal Magharib. Rabbul Mashariq, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِرَبِّ الْمَشَارِقِ وَالْمَغَارِبِ إِنَّا لَقَادِرُونَ. The multiple East and the multiple Wests. The rising points and setting points, they change during the summer and winter, the exact point. By that, the day lengthens, and the night shortens, and the night lengthens, and the day shortens. It is a celestial body of the daytime. That's the creation of the sun. That's how we have long days and short days, because of the exact point when it rises and the exact point when it sets. However, with the moon, actually, we'll finish this off tomorrow because I'm conscious that I think they're going to come on for the Burda. There's going to be a recital of the Burda. So we'll continue this point tomorrow. Let me just, there's a few questions that have come through. Okay, Jazakallah khairan. Is an effect upon us if we look at the full moon or specific phases of the moon and just want to confirm the degrees that we need to set on? Does the moon have an effect? It does have an effect. It doesn't have an effect. But what should be... I shouldn't say this, but even the stars have an effect. Even the stars have an effect. Yeah, the reason why to be careful is about horoscopes. But the stars, the sun, the moon does have an effect. Clearly it does. Like the sun, like without heat, what happens? Like you don't get enough vitamin C in your body without being exposed to the heat. It clearly has an effect. The moon has an effect upon it. The moon does have an effect. But what should be understood about the effect of the moon, the star, and the sun upon human beings? التأثير بقدرة الله وبخلق الله. Nothing affects except for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing affects except for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So does the moon have an effect? It does have an effect. It does have an effect. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates that effect. It's not, the moon doesn't have any inherent effect upon you. The sun can't burn, inherently can't burn. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that creates the effect. The moon, and that's why even stars, somebody says that person behaves that way because of his horoscope, he was born in that, according to that one. There may be some truth to that. Or بِخَلْقِ It's not by the star. The stars don't do anything. بِخَلْقِ If Allah subhanahu wants to create that as a system in terms of effects, then so be it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala qadir ala kulli shay. He has the ability to do whatever He wants to, whatever He wants. Can you put pictures up tomorrow? Inshallah, inshallah ta'ala. We'll stop the sisters asked the question at the end. How do you understand the difference at the start and end of the month? Is that there are 28 days with the stable and repeat states for the month? a couple of days of uncertainty either side. Perhaps that's how it's understood. Tamam, we'll stop there. So we'll continue at this point tomorrow, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. اللهم ارحمنا بالقرآن واجعله لنا إماما ونورا وهدى ورحمة. اللهم ذكرنا منه ما نسينا وعلمنا منه ما جهلنا وارزقنا تلاوته آناء الليل وأطراف النهار واجعله لنا حجة يا رب العالمين. آمين. جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ما هو أهله. جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ما هو أهله. جزا الله عنا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ما هو أهله. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. حضرة النبي الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.